Hello friends. I am Eliza, and you are watching Fact Sparks. Whenever our environment changes, our species changes. Some events like this in the last few years have came in front of us which we can analyze. One event from these happened in Florida, where 15 years ago from today a special type of lizard was found of green color, which was known as green anole. These were found everywhere. But then from Mexico, in aeroplanes, came a big lizard, which is known as brown anole. When brown anole entered in Florida, it started eating the green anoles. The brown anoles were stronger and the green anoles were not able to fight with them. Then the green anoles started climbing to the top of the trees, and the reason was that brown anoles were stronger, but they were not able to climb the trees. Much scales were not present in their claws or feet. Those green anoles, which were having less scales in their claws and could not climb the trees, became prey of the brown anoles, while the others, with more scales, started climbing the green and hided from the brown anoles. They started reproducing above the trees, and slowly and gradually the whole population of Florida of green anoles started having more scales. They were having more scales, so they were able to live on the top of the trees, and were able to easily walk on the small branches. This is a small example about how species adapt themselves with the environment. Now let's come to the history of humans. According to science, humans started from Africa, and then they slowly became to move out of Africa. We know that the people of Africa have darker skin tones. So what happened then, that when people came out of Africa, so their skin tone started getting changed? When we look at Europe, so the people have very fairer skin tones, whereas the Asian people have brown skin tones, but in Africa, we still find darker skin tones. For knowing this, first you need to know the climate zones of Earth. We know that equator is present in the middle of the Earth, and as we go far from the equator, so tropical regions come, and at the end we have polar zones. Equator is the place where most of the ultraviolet rays strike, which come from the sun. UV rays are more at the equator and tropical regions, but at the polar zones the UV rays strike less, which come from the sun, so it looks like the ultraviolet radiations have a connection with our skin tone, because the sun radiations gives us a lot of diseases like cancer, skin allergy, eye damage, and can also damage our DNA. There are 3 types of ultraviolet radiations, which are ultraviolet A, ultraviolet B, and ultraviolet C. Ultraviolet C doesn't cross our ozone layer, because ozone filters out these, so we are safe from that. Ultraviolet A and B strikes the Earth. You must have noticed many people during the cricket match have applied white cream on their face, which is known as sunblock. This is a type of cream which helps not to absorb ultraviolet A and B in the skin. It reflects the radiations from the surface of the skin so that it cannot damage our skin cells and tissues. But everyone do not have these sunblock cream. If you look at Africans, so they have a natural sunblock, because a special type of pigment is produced in our body, which is known as melanin. This pigment gives color to our body, skin, and hair. And the cell, which works to produce this pigment, is known as melanocyte. When photoreceptors of melanocytes gets ultraviolet radiations, so it produces more pigments, and because of that this pigment starts darkening our skin tone. So it means that darker people have more pigment, while fairer people have less pigment. Now your question will be that why this pigment is more in Africa. Melanocyte cells are same in all humans, even if you go to Antarctica, or Greenland, or anywhere else. But the pigment these cells produces can be less or more, and I have already told you that pigment is more where ultraviolet radiations are more. This pigment reflects back the ultraviolet A and B, so this is a natural sunblock, which our body have adapted slowly. Melanocytes are 5 to 10% of the epidermis. Same amount is produced in every human. If we go 1 lakh years back into Africa, so scientists think that life of humans began from Africa, and after that Africans started moving out of their country. When Africans moved into Europe so slowly, with the passage of time this pigment was produced less in their body, because in European countries sun doesn't fall too much and so the radiations are less. So we don't need a natural sunblock. But the less production of melanin in the body also have side effect. It processes the vitamin D, so if a body have less vitamin D, so it will also have adverse effects. Fairer people have 6% less melanin, but they make same vitamin D as Africans do. Because their bodies have adapted themselves, so even in less sunlight, they can produce vitamin D, but if an Asian or African go to Europe, so there he will feel severe deficiency of vitamin D, and the reason is that he has not adapted, and there he will get less light and he would not able to process vitamin D properly. Vitamin D is needed in our body because it absorbs many elements or compounds like calcium, magnesium, phosphate, iron, and zinc. If we do not absorb calcium, so our bones will be much weaker, and the most important thing is that we would not be able to make new skeleton during birth time, and survival of our generation will be difficult. You have to adapt if you want to survive and reproduce. Thanks for watching.